discussed question 4 in class a little bit, but I think it's probably not a bad idea to go ahead and review it one more time. So in this case, what I'm really testing in this question is to see how well each of you is at both debugging existing code, right? So it might be code that you wrote earlier in the week, right? And how good you are at filling in things that are missing and really understanding recursion. So the following class contains a single 1D array and has a method that computes so this should be just the maximum, computes the maximum of an array using recursion. Private class holds array contains an integer array, has a constructor, right, that copies just the pointer, has a getMax that takes no parameters, and then a recursive getMax function that takes in a range. In that, we first find the midpoint, right, and then do a recursive search on the left half and the right half, and return the maximum of that found on the other two. Okay, so the first question we're asked: how would you run get min max? Well, it's again supposed to be just get max. You can see I made this problem a little bit different right before I gave it to you guys to get the minimum and maximum over the entire array. Another way to ask this is, what does the blank on line 10 do? Well, so the blank on line 10 runs the initial search, right? So notice that the recursive search is private. So the public search is the one that's seen from the outside. And the person on the outside doesn't necessarily know how big the array is, right? So what we need to do is take that and figure it out. Well, the initial range that we're going to search over, right? We need to search over the entire array. So we do need to call the recursive method. So it's going to be return get max of something. So what's the initial range size? Well, so since we're talking here about searching over a range, well, it needs to be from 0 to ar.length minus 1, right? So that makes that initial call. So if we had our original array, 0 and n minus 1, right? It makes our original call on that and keeps going from there. So the next thing is something is missing from the definition of get max on line 15. So that's here. What is it? Well, what's missing there is the base case, right? So the first thing is that it's the base case. So what would the base case in this method probably be? Well, we're taking the range, we're splitting it in half, sending one half to a recursive call, the other half to another recursive call, and then finding the max between them. Well, the base case is what? When it's 0. So the base case is if start equals end, right? Return ARR end. Or ARR start. Right? Because that means we have one element left. And what's the maximum in an array of one element? Well, it's just that element. And in that case, start and end are the same value, so it doesn't matter which one we return. Okay. There's also a problem with the two calls made on lines 16 and 17. Sorry. 17 and 18. Here, how would you fix it? Well, what is it and how would you fix it? Well, so it's going from start to mid. So we find mid. And we go from here over, right? And from here over. And we sort of talked about this on the quiz, which I made a video about earlier. So it goes from start to mid minus 1 and mid plus 1 to end. Well, what's missing is that neither one of those includes mid, right? So the first part of the answer is neither call includes the index mid. And we would change that by setting change line 17 to int max1 equals get max start mid. Right? You could also change line 18 to go from mid to end. Either one is okay. There is another optional third solution, which would be a little more complex, where you would check to see if mid is greater than max or max2. Okay, and then the last part of this question, after you run the following code, right, 1, 2, 3, holds array, it changes that, array 1 equals 9. How would ha1.getMax, what would it return, assuming all this other stuff was fixed? And is that the desired behavior? So we talked about this a little bit. It's going to return 9. Right? Because the constructor only copies the pointer, right? It doesn't actually make a new version of the array. So when we change it outside of the object, it actually changes it inside the object as well, right? And is it the expected behavior? This is sort of a subjective question that, I kind of gave points to everybody on this because it was a little more subjective than I thought. But really, no, right? Like in my thinking, is it expected? Maybe, right? It would be weird to expect this behavior, I think. But if you justified your answer correctly, I think I gave you the points here. The idea that I wanted to point out to you was that because it didn't copy the values, changing the item after you've already sent it to the constructor, in this case, right, changes it within the object, which may or may not be expected, but usually it's not the behavior that you want when you originally implemented it. So the idea was to point out, to give you a heads up as you're writing software and classes that take arrays as input, that something like this could happen. Okay, I think that's it for question 4. I will see you guys at question 5.